So good afternoon, everyone. This is Audrey Russo, President and CEO of the Pittsburgh Technology Council. I am very, very excited about today. I know if you tune in regularly, you'll know that I get excited pretty often. And I got to tell you, today we are really going to pack a lot of punch in the brief amount of time that we can cover this topic, and I know you will be thrilled. So this is business as usual, although for the next 4 days, we've partnered with Liftoff PGH, which is an initiative that comes out of the Jewish Healthcare Foundation, and we're thrilled to partner with them. And we're also thrilled in a moment to talk to the women that are going to be joining us here. So a couple of things is that we've muted your microphones just to make sure that there's no noise in the background, and there is a chat. There is a chat that will allow you to ask questions of our guests, and we'll be monitoring that throughout. This is intended to be conversational, but there's a lot of information to share. So hold on to your seats. And I really want to give some appreciation to those who have sponsored us right from the beginning, which is Huntington Bank, Sheetz, and Comcast. Each one of them have helped tremendously during COVID. They helped tremendously all year long, but really the work that Huntington Bank has done in their small business group has been transformative for those during the roughest period that we've seen for many of us in our lifetime. Sheetz, if you don't know anything about Sheetz, not only are they very proud in terms of the services that they provide for the community from Altoona all the way, we found out that will soon be all the way to Columbus, but also they have an innovation center that's located here in Pittsburgh. So they're really putting their roots locally. And then Comcast has been working just feverishly, making sure that during this period of the digital divide, that people get access to Wi-Fi and that all people get access to Wi-Fi, sort of moving us into the world of Wi-Fi being the most important thing to keep people connected. So we've worked really hard at the Tech Council to make sure that kids get laptops, they get access, and they get Wi-Fi. So thank you. Get to know those sponsors because they really do matter in terms of building this region. So before we start the program today, I am going to bring on Mara Leff. She's the Director of Innovation for the Jewish Healthcare Foundation. She's going to talk about the history of Liftoff PGH and the vision of what we're calling Fempreneur. So welcome, Mara. And
thank you, Audrey.
Okay.
Am I unmuted?
Yes, you are. Okay,
wonderful. Well, thank you first and foremost to you, Audrey, and to your team at the Pittsburgh Technology Council for the partnership. It is wonderful to have partners like you all that are so like-minded and share a similar passion for promoting innovation in the Pittsburgh region. Before this, we gathered here, we all got together, the speakers, and found out a lot of us grew up very close to each other or near each other right here in Pittsburgh. So really, really nice to be surrounded by Pittsburgh fans. So we're excited to kick off the first day in our week-long series that we're calling Generation Fempreneur. And it's our exploration of the experience of Women Plus in innovation here in the Pittsburgh region. I think we're really passionate about this project. I do want to shout out our CEO, Karen Feinstein. Really, this is a very near and dear to her heart, and we're just thrilled to do this. So this series is actually part of a larger initiative that we call Liftoff PGH, which is an attempt to provide a platform for our local assets to be showcased here regionally as part of the innovation ecosystem. Everything from what's coming out of our academic institutions, what's coming out of our accelerators, folks that are working in the nonprofit sector and in our foundation community to support these programs. How do we start to have conversations that are inclusive across the ecosystem to propel it forward so that Pittsburgh can compete on a national and global scale? So we're thrilled to activate folks this December. We will be kicking off December 1st, a few weeks of programming with incredible national speakers that we'll be bringing in, some fun networking opportunities, on-demand content, an incredible game that we had some students at the Entertainment Technology Center create for us. Really just trying to have an engaging experience for people to get to know the assets here in our community, to help champion them, to build them up, to look for gaps and see how we can work together to make Pittsburgh the best that it can be. So, we're thrilled again to be kicking off Fempreneur, Generation Fempreneur. We have incredible speakers. We hope you'll join us all week. And we also hope you will join us in December. You can check us out at liftoffpgh.org. And thank you again, Audrey and your team. I'll turn it back over.
Thank you. Perfect job setting it up and perfect partnership. So thank you so much. Our missions are actually quite aligned on shining the light on all these things. So thank you so much for working with us on that. So now I have the pleasure of introducing today's guests, and they're going to lead us through a very interesting conversation about the University of Pittsburgh's FemTech Collaborative. And with us today, we have three women. They are Pitt medical professors, Tamar Krishnamurti, Sonya Borrero, and Mehret Birru-Talabi. And so thank you all for taking the time with us. And I am going to kick it off with Tamar. So Tamar, come up on the screen. You're going to be unmuted, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everyone. I am an assistant professor of medicine and clinical and translational science at the University of Pittsburgh, and also the CEO and a co-founder of Naima Health, which is a company that I spun out of both Carnegie Mellon and the University of Pittsburgh with IP that we licensed from academic research that we've done there. So my background is in studying human judgment and decision-making, trying to understand how people understand risks about their health, how to communicate about those risks in actionable ways to help support people's decision-making. So that's a little bit of background. And then in terms of our company, Naima Health has a kind of flagship product that was the result of academic work. It's called MyHealthyPregnancy. It consists of a patient-facing app and a provider-facing portal, and its primary function is to identify women at risk of certain adverse events during their pregnancy in a timelier fashion than we can do just with routine prenatal care. So it uses back-end machine learning algorithms to identify actions and resources that women and providers can use to kind of minimize pregnancy risks, and then it communicates that information back to pregnant people and their providers. And really glad to be here today.
So let me ask you one quick question. Is that app, we're going to put it in our chat, and is that app available right now?
It's currently available by prescription to any pregnant UPMC patient. We're in the midst of a 3,000 person beta test with UPMC. But we will be beginning kind of testing and dissemination in other healthcare systems as well soon.
Okay, so great. So you're in that phase of really sort of pseudo-clinical trials. It doesn't need FDA approval, but that's terrific. Okay, excellent. They can find information about that on actually the FemTech Collaborative website, I believe. So that's a place where everyone on this call should really go and mark, because there's lots of great information in there. So thank you, Tamar. I'm going to jump now to Sonya Borrero, and I'm going to bring her up, and we're going to talk about a little bit about you. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm thrilled to be here with Tamar and Mehret. I am a professor of medicine, clinical and translational science, and obstetrics and gynecology. I have a position at the University of Pittsburgh, but I'm also a staff physician at VA Pittsburgh. I'm a general internist by training, but my work is really focused on research, and I work quite a bit at the intersection of health equity and family planning. And so I think some of that work we'll dive into as we continue.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. So were you part of the research or the work that came out that ranked Pittsburgh one of the lowest places in the United States for Black women to actually live?
I have been tangentially involved in that research, but work closely with many of the authors as well as some of the community members who responded to that. So have been sort of part of that conversation, but a bit more tangentially. It was not a formal author on the report.
Good, thank you. So Mehret, thank you so much for being with us. This is Mehret Birru-Talabi, and welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you so much for the opportunity today. I'm really happy to be with you. So I am also an assistant professor of medicine at the University of Pittsburgh. I'm a rheumatologist. I grew up in Pittsburgh. Again, we were all talking about our Pittsburgh backgrounds. Grew up in Pittsburgh. And I received a combined MD PhD at the University of Pittsburgh. I received formal training in women's health during medical school and my internal medicine residency at UPMC. And when I began my rheumatology subspecialty training, many of the patient-centered principles related to reproductive health care that I had learned from my prior women's health training were actually somewhat absent in rheumatology. The culture was different. And I think today we're going to talk about some of the processes and tools that we're trying to use to change the culture in rheumatology so that reproductive health planning is more patient-centered, that there's more shared decision-making between patients, rheumatologists, and other subspecialists. But I am also working at the intersection of two fields, women's health and rheumatology.
Right, right. And and I've read a little bit about that. In no way am I any kind of expert on it, but can you just talk a little bit about why that intersection is so natural and why it's been overlooked?
Right, so about 70 to 90% of patients with autoimmune diseases are women. So it's a women's health specialty in and of itself. And why it's so important to focus on reproductive health and women's health issues in rheumatology isn't just the demographic population, but when autoimmune diseases can complicate pregnancy. Many of our diseases get worse during the course of pregnancy, and many of the medications that we use to control the diseases potentially can cause birth defects. And many women, in fact, culturally were told don't get pregnant by their rheumatologist. That was the prevailing way that women were counseled. But women, in many cases, want to experience pregnancy, and over the years have increasingly been doing so. The issues that our research has demonstrated that women really lack key knowledge about their risks and balanced information about their risks. And their providers still, again, are coming from this culture where they are undermining pregnancy. And so we are trying to operationalize how we communicate with patients, what their actual risks are, and how they can optimize their health, their treatment regimens, et cetera, in advance of pregnancy, if that's what they want. The other complicating factor is a lot of autoimmune diseases carry a thrombotic risk. What that means is that women are more likely to get blood clots. And blood clots can kill you, right? And some contraceptive methods also exacerbate blood clots in women. And so even directing women towards safe contraception has been an issue among women with autoimmune diseases. And so all of these factors are really, when you ask about the intersection of women's health and rheumatology, from desiring pregnancy to desiring pregnancy prevention, there are a lot of intrinsic and unique factors about this patient population, and a lot of misinformation that we really need to counter.
I could see where it was running parallel paths without any intersections for a long time. So Mehret, are you working at all with Tamar on her My Pregnancy app?
So the beautiful thing about our collaborative is that we are all somewhat engaged in each other's product. Tamar is way ahead of where I am. So I'm developing, co-developing with another investigator who focuses on cystic fibrosis research, an arm of decision-making tools to help inform women with complex medical illnesses, again, about their risks, about how to pursue healthy pregnancy, how to pursue pregnancy prevention if that's what they want. And Tamar has sort of been our guiding light in this process because she's actually been in the not only developed her tool, but been able to test it. And so she has been a beacon for us.
That's great. That's great. So I want to jump now, though. Thank you for sharing all that. So I want to jump now just to understand why you started this FemTech Collaborative. So who wants to take a stab at that? Sonya, do you?
Yeah, I can talk about that. So I think Mehret has already started to illuminate some of the work that we were all doing independently and discovering through our research as well as our clinical work, that there were significant deficits in the healthcare system around supporting people's reproductive health, and that these were particularly detrimental for people from marginalized populations, either medically vulnerable or socioeconomically marginalized populations. But basically, current healthcare delivery models really fail to proactively identify women's reproductive health needs and address preventable adverse outcomes. And I think, we see this reflected in the abysmal reproductive health indicators and disparities in this country, including unacceptably high and rising rates of maternal mortality. And I think, while the observed healthcare deficits really require, I think, a major overhaul in the fundamental approaches that healthcare systems and individual providers take in addressing reproductive health, we also sort of all independently recognize that in the interim, our patients needed decision and behavior support, and that web-based tools could offer a potentially scalable solution. And so we sort of, we all work together just by nature of the fact that we're all engaged in the same areas. And so we began to really understand the synergistic potential of a portfolio of tools that could interconnect across people's different reproductive journeys. I mean, each of our tools is sort of addressing a different piece of a reproductive life. So, some of the tools, including Mehret's, and we have a couple of other colleagues in the FemTech Collaborative, Lisa Caligari at the University of Washington and VA Puget Sound, and Tracy Kazmersky, who is a pediatric pulmonologist here. Some of their tools are sort of addressing women and people who are making decisions about whether or not to get pregnant, whether or not to use contraception, and the timing of those. So sort of this pre-pregnancy or inter-pregnancy timeframe. Tamar's tool really helps to address healthy pregnancy. And I have another tool that is helping support decisions at the end of childbearing, so whether or not to get a sterilization procedure. And so we were all sort of, like I said, sort of interested in the synergistic potential of sort of the interconnected suite of tools, but we were also facing a lot of the same ethical and logistical challenges of developing and disseminating tools for maximal impact. And so we just sort of came together as a collaborative to sort of formalize, our already working relationship.
And so this collaborative, though, it transcends Pittsburgh. You have other partners that are outside of Pittsburgh?
Just one so far, but yeah. And again, this is because of existing collaborations. Lisa Caligari is an OBGYN in Seattle who I've been working with for probably 10 years at this point.
Okay.
And so she and I are creating a tool that actually Mehret and Tracy are sort of adapting for their specific populations. But the tool that Lisa has worked on is a decision support tool for women veterans. And so that's a unique population because of a couple of things. One, these are women of reproductive age seeking care in a historically male-dominated healthcare system. But also this is a population that has a really high burden of chronic medical conditions, substance use disorders, and mental illness. And so, a common theme across all of our tools is that these are populations for which providers and society might be judgmental about whether or not they are reproducing. And their pregnancies therefore stigmatized, right? And so we're seeking ways to support these populations to sort of exercise their full autonomy and that really honor their sort of humanity and dignity.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And there is a site, right? There is a site for this collaborative. So I'm hoping, Lexi, maybe you can find it and put it out there so people can go there, because I know there's lots of resources that are tied to that.
Yeah, I'll just say that the sort of arch umbrella of our FemTech Collaboratives is the Center for Women's Health Research and Innovation, which I direct, and all of these guys are a part of. And so that's the website query, and we can send it to you guys. And the FemTech Collaborative is a sort of a division of query.
It's great. So, you know, listen, you all come from clinical backgrounds. You all come from really deep medical, you know, training. And now you're looking at commercializing technology. And that's not that easy, even in the simplest of apps, right? As you probably know, Tamar, that it's really tricky. Can each of you talk about that? And I can start with you. Talk about what that means in terms of trying to take something out of research and to commercialize that, and maybe be even a little candid about what the bumps in the road have been, and even maybe tell us what we could do to help all of you.
Do you want me to lead with that one?
I want you to do that. Thank you. Thank
you.
Yeah,
so I will say, of the three of us, I am not an MD, I'm a PhD. So I do have a kind of a different background, but very much an academic background. So, I mean, I think, you know, as you alluded to, there are kind of the standard logistical challenges that come with commercializing and managing sensitive patient data. So things like, you know, as I mentioned, we licensed our IP from multiple academic institutions. And even though the tech transfer people were really super great to work with, you know, those things take months of negotiation and legal resources, and working with a major clinical partner, we really need to make sure the data is HIPAA compliant and all our processes and servers are secure. And when you're in an academic institution and you're working as a faculty member, there are entire departments that handle this kind of thing. But then when you start your own company, you kind of have to build that infrastructure from scratch, and that takes a lot of resources. But I think probably the biggest challenge that I've faced, and that I'm sure Mehret and Sonya can weigh in on, is just really this tension and this balance that's required when you wear an academic research hat and when you also wear a commercial entity hat. Because even though your own motivations in both your work and your commercial product development might be really beautifully internally aligned, sometimes the incentive structures for each of those things are not. So as a junior faculty member, kind of navigating the tenure process, which I'm doing right now, I have to sometimes make really tricky decisions. So am I going to pursue federal funding opportunities, right, that are slow to come to fruition, that counted very heavily in my promotional, you know, life and my work at Pitt? Or do I want to kind of pursue less traditional funding, really work on kind of cutting edge, high risk work that could push our My Healthy Pregnancy app work forward, but might not be recognized, right? So there's
so how do you balance that? Can I ask you, how are you balancing that?
It's, well, I call Sonya and Mehret a lot.
What advice do they give you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best advice is really to focus on doing what I believe in. It sounds a little cheesy, but just keeping my eye on the mission. And I think when we're focused on, you know, a goal of addressing health disparities and a goal of producing something that's really evidence-based and that can make a difference, it may be a slightly slower burn commercially, but at the end of the day, there's more potential with that as a commercial product. And at the same time, it really keeps me, you know, that keeps me focused on what I deeply care about and the reason that I went into academia in the first place. So that's how, but also I think taking this, you know, using this FemTech Collaborative to actually kind of forge new standards for how we do this kind of development, how we manage conflict of interest, kind of formalizing those into a framework that other researchers like us can use is part of the work that we're actively doing right now.
So I can feel the tension even in what you've just articulated. So I really appreciate that candor, because here you have many people that are in our audience that would be cheering you on to commercialize something. But I think what you shared with all of us is that it's not so simple, because I have this academic career that requires different kinds of things from me and of me. But meanwhile, we're on the outside, we're cheering, we're saying, no, we want that. We want that to come into the world and commercialize, because that helps with even further expanding the entrepreneurial ecosystem here. So I really applaud your candor with that, with all of us on that. I want to go to Mehret quickly. What about from your standpoint in terms of some of the tensions of commercializing versus research, and particularly as you've done some work in terms of the intersections thereof? What have been some of the challenges?
I would say I'm early in this journey, and I would echo what Tamar said. I struggle with the administrative, clinical, research, teaching priorities and that are part of academia, this career path that I've gone into. At the same time, we have to get our tools off the shelf. And I think in academia, in many cases, such tools have been developed, aids have been developed, research has been developed, and it's sat on a shelf. And really what we understand is that we need to get the tools to people, and to disseminate them, we probably do need to commercialize. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, we're just doing the research for ourselves. Mm-hmm. And so I am a true academic who is being forced to commercialize in order to achieve the mission that I have, which is to help to change this culture in rheumatology. I wouldn't say that I have gone into this looking in an entrepreneurial way at research. It is really the only way that we can get our tools out there. Mm-hmm. So I would say that my own lack of knowledge, and in all the training that I've had, I have accumulated very little knowledge about how to be an entrepreneur, how to be successful in this sphere, and all the things that I'm more comfortable with teaching and administrative and responsibilities in patient care, et cetera. You know, there's such an incentive to do those things. To really be an entrepreneur, you have to think it, you have to feel it every day. You have to, imbibe what you're doing every day. And it is a little bit of a challenge when you really don't know what you're doing, mm-hmm. frankly, and you haven't been trained in that way. And I think that's one way that the FemTech Collaborative is helping all of us who, again, as part of our training, never really learned how to be successful entrepreneurs. We're not business people. But we do have this mission to do science that advances healthcare for women. And I think that is really pushing us in that direction. So there are lots of tensions here, but we really are very mission driven. And I think that's what's prompting the work.
Well, I would say that even people who have been quote unquote trained in entrepreneurship have the same tensions that you just articulated, because no one has all the skills to be able to launch anything. So if that's any kind of consolation, not that your tension isn't real, but I applaud that. I applaud that, your candor on that. So thank you for that. Sonya, you want to add anything to that before I jump into another question? Okay, is she on mute? Sonya is on mute. Try it again.
Okay, I think
You're good.
All right, great. Yeah, I will echo everything that Tamar and Mehret said. I just also want to I think, Mehret and I come from a very similar background in that we've just grown up and we're steeped in academic medicine. And I think, Tamar has been really like Mehret said, a beacon for us, because she just has seen different models. But I will say, our comfort is in science and research. And so if we could do all of this, using our usual channels, we would. But I just wanted to highlight for people, the kind of science and research we do is really social science, right? And so it is dynamic and it is contextual. And so the kinds of funding streams that we get are are static and sort of capped by a timeline. And so even though we can produce the evidence and research that our tools are effective, we recognize that not only to disseminate them, but to sustain them and keep them relevant, like we need to find other mechanisms to do that. And that's why, you know, as Mehret said, we sort of feel like we are forced to commercialize. We don't know of another pathway. And those models are pretty rare in academia. And so we're really, I think it's been a struggle for us. And like I said, not just logistical, but ethical. You know, our mission is really to promote health equity and the autonomy, reproductive autonomy of marginalized populations. And how do you mix that with a commercial structure? And so we've been really,
All right, is there sound off? Hang on. Let me see if anyone else is on. The sound is off. Can everyone hear me? Okay, so can you click on and off again and just see if it's,
did that work?
Yep,
Yeah,
thank you.
No worries. Anyways, I don't know where I left off, but that's okay.
You're good.
Enough.
You're good. So I think the issue here and with our audience is that you will be surprised at how many people actually want to be helpful to all of you. Okay, and this is an opportunity that we love to do at the Tech Council, is to make sure that there are ways where there are people like yourselves that are navigating through the complexities of this. I mean, the subject matter in and of itself, but the complexities of trying to commercialize this. If there's a way for us to be helpful to you, that's what we're good at, is trying to connect who those people are that might invest, that might be able to move your agenda forward. We had a couple of comments that are in the chat. One is for federal funding. This is asked by Jim Moore. Does Pitt provide support to go after SBIR and STTR funding? And those typically are the funding where they're actually grants so that they don't take equity inside your company. So does Pitt offer that for the three of you? Are you leveraging any of those resources? Mehret?
And I think Tamar can speak to that.
Okay. Tamar, is that right?
Yes. Yeah. Hi. So yes, Pitt does help support the pursuit of SBIR funding when it's really STTR funding. So
okay.
When there's a partnership between an academic institution and a commercial entity, that's a particular form of the non-dilutive small business innovation funding that's available from various federal branches. And so our company has actually received SBIR funding, which we outside the university, but they certainly are very supportive of helping with STTR funding and kind of transitioning, I think, focus on that kind of commercial funding as being viewed similarly to other forms of federal funding in terms of like milestones and success of their faculty.
So there's a quick personal question that was asked in here, and I think it's geared towards Mehret from Anita. She's saying that her mother, who lives in India, is suffering from severe rheumatoid arthritis, and she was told that pregnancy actually triggered the flare-up later in her life. Could that be true?
It's an interesting immunologic phenomenon that happens with rheumatoid arthritis. So for many women, rheumatoid arthritis actually gets better during the course of pregnancy. And when you think about it, I'll just try not to do a long explanation, but really quickly, you know, your body has to accommodate to a fetus that's 50% not yours. Okay, so your immune system would ordinarily fight off a fetus, right? But your immune system has to change during the course of pregnancy in order to accommodate the fetus. And for some diseases, autoimmune diseases, this transition is occurring on the back of a disordered immune system. So some diseases get worse during the course of pregnancy, and some diseases actually get better because the transition of the immune system that has to happen to accommodate the fetus goes into a sort of a different immunologic pathway that perhaps is a little better for that particular disease. Rheumatoid arthritis is one of those diseases that tends to get better during the course of pregnancy. But after the child is delivered, the immune system snaps back to what it was before, and that process takes about 3 months. And after about 3 months, many women with rheumatoid arthritis will experience a severe disease flare.
Wow. Okay.
And that's just, again, part of the natural shifts of immunologic shifts that are associated with pregnancy. So sometimes women will present for the first time with rheumatoid arthritis roughly about 3 to 6 months after they've delivered a child.
Oh.
And that's the reason why that immunologic shift may precipitate the disease, make it worse if the disease was already existing, or bring about the diagnosis of the disease. So your mom's time frame seems a little off. I guess it would depend on when she had her last child. But certainly pregnancy can trigger rheumatoid arthritis.
Well, good. Hey, you did a great job breaking that down. I think I understand that. And in no way trying to simplify the complexity of all your knowledge, but thank you for that. And for breaking it down and answering Anita's question. I have a question here as we start to wind down, is what resistance, and this is back to my question earlier, what resistance have you experienced in securing funding and outside capital? And how can we, all of us in our ecosystem, how can we be helpful to each of you? So who wants to take that? Who wants to take that? How can we help? How has it been going in terms of raising money? This is that entrepreneurial side. This is that business side. There are a ton of people who are on this call that are ultra talented and would certainly want to be helpful. So can you talk about that? Anyone want to jump in first?
Tamar, you want to take that?
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to share a little bit of our experience. I mean, I think that this again comes back to that balance and tension that we're trying to navigate. And I think with funding in particular, it can feel a little bit like being in a no man's land. You know, I think as an entity, and I think Sonya kind of referenced this, but as an entity that addresses women's health needs, and particularly for vulnerable populations, you know, for like when we've been when our work has been academically based, we've received incredible support in Pittsburgh from local foundations, as you know, as well as federal funding. But I think when you start to commercialize those things, there's an element of stigma that comes into play. It feels icky to commercialize something, I think, from the outside that's addressing reproductive health, that's addressing marginalized populations, because the idea of profit generation from an issue that is an issue of social equity and social responsibility, it can, I think, not sit well with some funders. And then, you know, at the same time, there could be, you know, issues with kind of VC funding when you're so mission driven, right? Because, you know, VC funding often comes based on potential rather than this kind of slow evidence generation. So I think that's been the tension, but it does seem like there's more of a movement towards kind of social good based funds. And I think you know, this is an area that we're all learning about still and exploring. And so I think any kind of knowledge and guidance from this community that's, I mean, Pittsburgh's really special in having a strong set of foundations, a strong kind of non-profit work, really great innovation, a small community, yet a really knowledgeable and supportive community. It's kind of a perfect place to grow this kind of technology. So we're here to learn what we don't know from people who do, I think.
So are any of you comfortable in if people reach out to us and they want to get in contact with any of you, are you comfortable with that? And us sharing that? Okay. And so we can do that. And ways for us to connect with you would be great, because many of us have relationships outside of the region of people that would be very interested in terms of the work that you're talking about, and that there is a happy marriage that can occur with social good and being profitable and lucrative. So there is that, and more people who are angel investors care about that as well. So I would like to see this as an opportunity for people to be helpful to the work that each of you have spawned. So I just want to say this has been an incredible conversation. It is a tip of the iceberg. I am so proud of that the three of you women are doing the kind of work that you're doing. I'm blown away. And I think that taking on the kind of issues that you're talking about is an imperative. It's not just a nice to have, it is an imperative. And I think that the more we can shine the light on your work, thank you to Liftoff for having you and pulling you out and saying that you need this kind of exposure at the Tech Council. We're going to be paying attention to you. We now know that you are friends who are doing things to change the world. So I want to thank Mehret, I want to thank Tamar, and I want to thank Sonya. They are amazing. And I want to tell you about tomorrow, that tomorrow, and the three of you can join us as well, because these are additionally amazing women. And we have Audrey Russo. She is the acting dean at the University Honors College over at the University of Pitt. If you don't know her, she's a force to be reckoned with. And Ayanna Ledford at Carnegie Mellon. She is the Director of Diversity and Inclusion. And we are going to continue to talk about these issues, figure out ways to solve these issues, and continue to work in partnership with Liftoff and the Jewish Healthcare Foundation. And I thank Mara for, being such a great collaborator. So I'm going to sign off, but I want to thank these three incredible women. Please keep doing the work. Thank you so much for your candor. And signing off, we'll see everyone same place here tomorrow. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.